and concerns of the community. Purpose of tonight's meeting is to make recommendations to the City Commission regarding each item on the agenda. Tonight we'll be conducting a public hearing. Therefore, this meeting is open to the public. Anyone in the audience who wishes to give testimony to any of the items on the agenda will need to be sworn in by the Deputy City Clerk. This swearing-in process will occur after tonight's first agenda item, which will be the approval of the minutes from the last LPA meeting. Please be aware that this local planning agency is not a quasi-judicial board and therefore has no final decision-making power. Our procedures, however, are structured in a quasi-judicial manner for the benefit of those who come before it. Tonight's format will be as follows. I will introduce each item on the agenda, after which the city representative will present information about it. Thereafter, the members of the local planning agency will respond to the city representative. Finally, anyone from the public may come forward. Those from the public wishing to give testimony will need to approach the dais, identify themselves, and then utilize a speaker's lectern in order for their comments to be recorded. Upon the conclusion of the public hearing, the local planning agency will consider the evidence before it and will vote on the agenda item. That voice vote is a rendition of the order of the board, and there will be no written decision issued by the board. For the record, Adam Smith's absence from tonight's meeting is excused. The first item on tonight's agenda is the approval of the minutes from the July 14th, 2021 LPA meeting. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as included?
I move that we accept the minutes from the July 14th meeting.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Mr. Graham and seconded by Mr. Walensky to approve the minutes as submitted. All those in favor?
Madam Chairman, please, pardon me, just one minor item is that Mr. Walensky is listed at the head of the minutes as being present and absent.
Okay, thank you. You know, I didn't even notice that. Mr. Roberts, thank you very much. You were here and you weren't here, but you weren't here. So, yes, if you will please correct the minutes to reflect the fact that Mr. Walensky had been.
The motion.
Thank you for resending the motion and the second as well.
Second.
If you'll strike that or make that correction to the minutes stating that Mr. Walensky was indeed excused from his absence and therefore was not present at the July 14th meeting. Thank you. Right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
So moved.
Is there a
Second that.
Okay, Mr. Graham has made the motion to accept. Mr. Walensky has made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by the same sign. The motion carries unanimously and the minutes stand approved as corrected. The Deputy City Clerk will now swear in all persons wishing to speak to or give testimony to any of tonight's agenda items.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
Second item on our agenda tonight is ordinance 21-29, approving and authorizing the execution of a development agreement between the City of Dunedin and the Coastal ICF, Construction Services Incorporated, and Grant Street Partners, LLC, for the Dunedin Causeway Hotel at 491 Causeway Boulevard. Has anyone on this board had any ex parte communication regarding anything having to do with this ordinance? Hearing none. Our city representative.
Good evening. I'm Joseph DePasqua, the Assistant Director of Community Development on behalf of the Community Development Department. So this evening, what we have to present to you is Ordinance 21-29. This is for the development agreement for the Dunedin Causeway Hotel, also called the J Hotel. The project owner is Grant Street Partners, LLC. The developer is Coastal ICF Construction Services, Inc. And the representatives are Mr. Doug Anderson and I think Mr. Charlie Wilson, also from the Blue Jays, may or may not be here this evening. I haven't really looked around the room. The location, again, 491 Causeway Boulevard. The property size is approximately 0.85 acres, or about 37,000 square feet. The property land use currently is commercial general, CG. The zoning district designation is FXM, form-based medium, and property is located in a special flood hazard area, zone AE 12. So by way of background, and so this evening, this item is coming to you a little bit later than you're traditionally used to seeing these things. This was originally approved for negotiations back in August, and so there's been a little bit of a delay in getting it back in front of you. There's some good reasons for that. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm sure the applicant will as well. So a little bit background on the project itself. The applicant developer is requesting approval of a development agreement with the city to build a 51-room, 3-story hotel. It will be a ground floor parking with 2 floors of rooms above for a grand total of 3 floors in height. It'll also include the normal amenities that you'd find in a hotel, such as meeting rooms and things of that nature, and a ground floor swimming pool. The primary use of this particular hotel, unlike most, is going to be for the Toronto Blue Jays during spring training and during their normal regular season play and throughout even the off-season. My understanding, they'll be monopolizing, if you will, for lack of a better term, the rooms throughout most of the year. However, and I'm sure the applicant will speak to this, the public will have some availability, some rooms, different times of the year, a certain number of rooms, but that will be, my understanding, is the minority of the rooms available. So as indicated, the property is in a commercial general land use. Let me see if I have. So let me just quickly run through the aerial to familiarize anybody with the location. So as I mentioned, the property is at 491 Causeway Boulevard. So of course this is looking north. Causeway Boulevard's directly in front of it. And then you can see South Paula Drive actually wraps around it to the south. We do have an existing boundary survey. You can see the site currently contains a car wash and a small outbuilding in the rear of it, which would be removed ultimately when development were to happen to make way for the new hotel. So as indicated, the property is in the commercial general zoning district, and that's what drives the density allowable on the site. And so commercial general by right allows 40 temporary lodging units or hotel rooms per acre. And then there is a request, you can request up to 60. So between 40 and 60 is a request that can be made, maximum being 60. And so as a condition of that request, you have to request a development agreement with the city to ask for more than 40 up to 60. So that's what's happening here with this proposal. So in this specific instance, a 0.85 acre parcel of land at 40 units an acre would support 34 units by right, or 34 hotel rooms by right, and then up to 51 with the 60 per acre maximum. So the difference being the request here is go to development agreement and ask for an additional 17 units or 17 hotel rooms. A temporary lodging also, when it's located in a evacuation level A, as you would imagine, being on the causeway, this property is certainly within an evacuation level A. There is a requirement that a covenant for an evacuation plan also accompany the development agreement, and you'll find that is Exhibit D to the development agreement. So that has been included as well and negotiated with the applicant. So so I would draw your attention, as I did in the staffing, to Section 4 of the development agreement, which lays out the developer's obligations in conjunction with the agreement itself. Some additional information we'd like to add. So again, this project's gone on for quite some time. The City Commission authorized the negotiations in August of last year. A lot has happened since then. The developer had looked to potentially put the hotel across the street on the north side. When that did not pan out, they decided to come back to where they received the approval to negotiate this site and have done so, and that's the proposal you see in front of you this evening. The other thing that has changed in just the recent past is the developer has put under contract the property directly to the west. So in the interest of just letting the LPA know, obviously at some point in the future it's envisioned that if they move forward with that purchase, then we would be looking at this on development design review at the next step. We'd be looking at it more of a unified site because we know some of the challenges with Causeway Boulevard would affect both parcels. So as these projects work, you know how this, from a development agreement standpoint, the first thing would be to adopt an ordinance and to agree to the terms and basically record the development agreement. That would be followed by our formal design review for the project itself. And what staff wanted to point out here is that by then, it's possible the property would be purchased, and we'd be looking at potentially the impacts of both sites being developed at some point in the future. So we just wanted to be candid that that's something that's sort of a future plan of both the developer and the Blue Jays, obviously. So from a previous action standpoint, the City Commission, as I mentioned, last August 6th, did authorize the city manager to enter negotiations with the developer, and that those negotiations really kicked off in earnest after the north side property did not pan out for the developer. They moved back to the south side, and we've been working towards a negotiated development agreement. The city manager obviously takes the lead on that with the city attorney's office, and so that's what you have in front of you this evening. And so I'll jump to the next action before I talk about staff recommendation. So the next action would be, as I mentioned, the next action would be to take this to the City Commission, first and second reading. If adopted, then the development agreement is recorded. And at that point, the applicant would then start the design review process, where they would come back to you to approve the design and construction of the building. They would go through that formal design review process where we talk about architectural style, compatibility, we would talk about parking and all the things that you're used to seeing more on that technical side. So with that being said, the staff recommendation is to approve Ordinance 2129 and the negotiated development agreement. I've provided the signed agreement signed by the developer in the backup along with the ordinance. I have the aerial vicinity map, again, a boundary survey of the property. I've also provided you the preliminary civil drawings, so you'd have an understanding of what the site is going to be. Again, it's really more an informational. We're not asking you to approve any design at this point, but we wanted to give you as much information as we could. The proposed site plan is part of, and it's up on the screen, it's part of the development agreement. You can see the general layout of the site. The architectural renderings, these are the latest version using a coastal vernacular style of architecture, and they've provided an elevation from all four sides, and that is part of the development agreement as an exhibit. So I provided those as well. And I did provide the minutes from the August, since it had been so long ago, the August 6th City Commission meeting where the authorization was granted. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the LPA may have.
I do have a question. It's specific to those minutes that we did have a chance to review from a year ago. And I noticed that the Eco Seascape Construction Services is no longer what we're seeing on this application. Is this
Yes.
just a name change, or?
Well, yeah, so the property was purchased under the LLC, the Grant Partners LLC. So the development agreement, the title of it, and the contract, if you will, between the parties is now up to date with the current entities, if you will.
Hey, Mr. Massero?
Joe, this development agreement, as I see this, we're only doing it for two reasons. One reason is that we're in this flood zone A, so we're required to provide some kind of information to the city. Is that truly in fact a requirement?
Mr. Massero, it's because they're in an evacuation level A.
So it'd be
So
regardless.
First ones that have to get out during a storm event, so there has to be a plan in place.
Right. And the second part of this is that they're looking at this section 103-15.1, where they have the option, if the city so chooses to give them the option, to increase the density on that piece of property.
That's correct.
So when I look at what you're asking us to do, because you said we've got some architectural renderings that we could look at, but we're not going to really talk about them. And we've got a site plan that we're not really going to talk about. We're only going to talk about this development agreement because.
Well, let me just say this. If it came across that I said we're not going to talk about it, I'll let the developer answer any technical questions. But what I wanted to be more clear, and maybe I didn't get the point across, is you're not being asked to approve any design elements or construction tonight. We provided you the information and certainly can answer questions about it in general, but we're not, I just wanted to make it clear that we're not asking for any design review this evening. That will come at a later date.
Okay.
I apologize if that was not clear.
All right. Then, you made a statement in the additional information in your staff report where we are concerned about the future development of the additional piece of property and how it would impact this project, okay? So what if, and I did read through the development agreement, what if between now and the next time we meet to discuss this project, the developer chooses not to buy that piece of property? There is something within the development agreement. How can we still move forward without him purchasing that piece of property? Obviously, we can, assuming we agree that we can give him the additional density that we're not required to do by code. Am I correct in that?
Well,
The city does have an option to say, no, we're not crazy about what you're totally asking us for, but we would be happy with maybe not, the 51 you're asking for, but 45 or something different. I read that in that.
So there's a number of questions in there. Let me try to answer each one of them individually. So what you're seeing tonight has nothing to do with that other parcel, and whether or not they move forward with the purchase of it or not has no relevance on what we're doing this evening. However, having said that, we knew that the developer had put that under contract. We know that the developer and the Blue Jays would like to do an expansion, an addition, and/or perhaps another small hotel on that site to accommodate the Blue Jays. There's a need. And I don't want to speak for the applicant, but this is what I've been told. And so we wanted to make it clear, sort of up front, that that is potentially going to happen. But this project can move forward, and the subject of the project is only the parcel 491 Causeway Boulevard. It's the one parcel at the moment. And if the developer chooses to move forward with the purchase of that property, and that deal goes forward, and they want to develop that site, we would be looking at essentially the same process we're going through now.
Okay, except that, in my mind, if I'm going to make a decision here to approve the 51, if all I'm approving is the agreement between the city and the developer. That's what we're looking at, that's what we're going to do here today.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so part of that is the acknowledgement that we're willing to offer up 51 units on that piece of property.
The request is the maximum that would be allowable under the density, with
If we
requesting
agree-
the additional density, yes.
All right, so
Yes.
in my mind, if I knew that additional piece of property were part of this overall project, I wouldn't feel like the density has such grand impact on that 0.85 tenths of an acre. So it's a concern of mine that this additional piece of property could impact the project in a couple of different ways. And I just don't want to make a decision here today that could impact us down the road in case that property does not get purchased, does not become part of this project. Now, am I on the wrong track here? Should I not even be going in this direction? I guess I'm.
I would not feel comfortable answering that. What I don't know, I understand your concerns, I really
Yeah.
do. I guess the intent of putting that additional paragraph in was to let you know so that there is a possibility there could be a future development on that site related to this project. And the city would be looking at those almost collectively, because you'd still be looking at access that is relatively close. And so would there be a way to, if that were to be purchased, would we want to look at the access points off Causeway differently at some point in the future? We just, again, it was really more of an FYI to let you know that we're aware that that could be coming forward. I understand what you're saying. And maybe the developer can give you more assurances about what the plans are. I'm going by what I've been told at this point, which is the property is under contract, and if the plan goes as proposed or as they hope it will, then it would be some type of expansion to this hotel, the one they're proposing this evening.
Okay.
If all of that happened, would there be another development agreement needed?
So a separate parcel, if they were requesting, again, that additional density above that parcel is similarly sited, so it's got the same zoning and land use, and yes, it would be the same process. You would have to request a development agreement if you asked for more than 40 units per acre of temporary lodging, up to 60. Again, the maximum being 60.
I've got a couple questions, too. I understand that if this changes and the other property becomes part of this development, then there's a whole new development agreement that has to be reviewed. So I understand that. The question I have is I'd like you to explain to us a little bit about what the alternative density standards are in the county and why they apply here.
So, well, it's not the county. The only part this is right out of our land development code. We allow an alternate density in 3 separate land use categories.
Okay.
The commercial general being one of them, commercial recreation is the other, and resorts facilities medium is the third. Okay. So our code allows you to request up to a certain amount of either density or intensity. If non-residential, it would be intensity, it would be floor area ratio. You can request above the base amount that the land use allows. The condition of requesting that is you need a development agreement. The condition of that development agreement, if it's in an evacuation level A, is you have to have the covenant that you see attached. So if you request it, you need a development agreement. If it's in the evacuation level, you need the covenant about how to get people off. If it's not in an evacuation level A, then you don't need the covenant. You still need the development agreement to make that request above the base zoning that's allowed.
Joey, I had a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
It appears that the development agreement, it's a 3-party agreement, the city, the developer, and the builder. But it seems like the developer and the builder share common membership as well as a mailing address. Why wouldn't it be a 2-party agreement?
I'm going to have to refer to it from a legal standpoint because obviously the attorneys drafted the development agreement.
I know that's not the usual one, so.
At this time, this is how it was drafted in order to make sure that all parties to this contract and all really parties who have a stake in the development agreement are attributed their rights in this contract. I know that the city attorney's office, Nikki Day, worked very closely in order to make sure that this contract was drafted in accordance with Florida statutes, in accordance with the city of Dunedin's code. So I can assure you that how it is written is in accordance with all applicable regulations.
I believe the question was, why is it not 2 instead of 3, since they share a common post office box and
They seem to have the
address?
same membership in the LLCs.
Well, we also have to go how they're incorporated under the Florida with the state. So if they are registered under a separate name, they are legally a separate entity. So we can, even if there are many entities that share a common address or a common membership, but if it is to attribute, is to account for how their status with the state of Florida, their legal status with the state of Florida.
Is there I'm not sure if this one's for Joey or for you, is there anything that would happen in the failure of this developer not to live up to this agreement? Are these projects bonded? Are there any construction timetables set in? I mean, this is a big project. Does the city require this guy to be bonded to build this?
So let me talk from a land development code standpoint.
Okay.
So we do not require a bond to get a building permit, and I'm not aware of anyone that does. However, the infrastructure, our engineering division, requires certain performance bonds to do work in the right-of-way to guarantee that work is done right, and then there's a maintenance bond after it's done to make sure it's maintained for a certain period of time. So that is a normal course of infrastructure review. You've heard that term here many times. That is part of their process. But I'm not aware of the city requiring a bond. But to answer another part of your question is the city does have time limitations both on building permits and time of construction in the land development code. So the development agreement itself, and I'm sure the attorney's going to speak, has a time limitation on it. But our code also requires that certain time of construction has to be met as well.
And in the duration of the agreement, I saw the term 10 years, and then I also saw verbiage to track with the agreement with the Blue Jays, which is 25 years. Is there some reason why that's, and I know there's people in this room that can answer that, but I'm just curious. 10-year duration here, but to track with the agreement just signed with the Blue Jays is 25.
Could you point to the area in the contract where it says that?
You know, I spent the day reading this, and I'll bet you read it a lot quicker
It's
than I do.
section 3, 3.2 on page 2 of 14.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, 3.2, the duration shall be a period of 10 years. But then later on, I saw it talked about the duration of the agreement with the Blue Jays.
Well,
But I think it gets reviewed. You,
Required to be reviewed annually.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not going to speak for the attorney, but it also talks about it after 10 years, it can be mutually extended in that same paragraph.
Also, there's a contact in the, I guess to represent our 34th governor. Your firm is, the first word is Bryant, right? Not Brian? Because that's incorrect here. That's incorrect in here. Did you see that?
I did not see that, no, but it is correct that it's
Okay.
B-R-Y-A-N-T, but that wouldn't affect the validity of the contracts.
Okay. All right, because I saw it was signed like that, but I knew it wasn't correct. It is Bryant, right?
Yeah, yes, that's the first word of the firm name, correct. But that wouldn't affect that's not a crucial term
Okay.
of this contract. And
Except I spent the day reading it, I thought it was all crucial, so I was,
Right, well, is it something that can be corrected?
yeah, I believe that the city can negotiate some certain corrections before it goes to the city commission. If there are typos and not material changes, I believe that those can be corrected, yes. So that's a good eye.
Joe, back to the duration of the agreement being 10 years. So what happens after 10 years? That's different out of this agreement.
I believe you can renegotiate another 10-year term. Yeah,
That's all that is? It has to be renegotiated, I would think, right?
I believe it does, yes.
Yeah, there are certain statutory limits for the duration of development agreements and also in the city code. So Mr. DePasqua also spoke to the, really the monitoring of the agreement, which under the city's code is done annually. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that, if you look at the annual review, it's under 10.2 on page 14.
Well, but even back on page 2, it's indicating that it's the duration of 10 years if the agreement is to be extended by mutual consent of the developer and the city commission, subject to public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the code and review for compliance with current city ordinances and regulations to the extent that such extension is not contrary to the laws of the state of Florida. Notwithstanding, the foregoing this agreement shall automatically terminate if the approval of the site plan for the project is not both obtained within 1 year of the effective date.
So that's specifically speaking to design review.
Are there any other questions of staff?
Yeah, Joe, sorry.
No?
Okay. So, up for our review tonight is this development agreement. And if we say we're go, then we've basically given the developer the right to go ahead and do the density that he's asked for.
So you would make a recommendation if you believed that the terms of the agreement were adequate, and that would go to the city commission for first and second reading, and it would be their decision ultimately on what final density could get approved. And if it's adopted, of course, on second reading, whatever that final number is, then the developer would have those entitlements to then move to the design review phase and build the project, come through that process.
All right, so So it's the city commission that, when they will review this agreement?
Yeah, so this will go to the city commission.
Before,
first
just
and
like
second.
with us, they won't be looking at drawings, they'll see the drawings, but they won't be looking at the final things. They're just gonna look at the agreement, or are they gonna look at the agreement with all of the architecture and civil involved?
Basically, what you're seeing here and what you received in your backup will be just supplemented with the results of this evening's action. It will be the same basic staffing. You'll notice the staffing is not made out to this group. It's basically a staff report that includes all 3 hearing dates. So we would supplement the staffing after tonight and provide the minutes to the meeting this evening for first reading in front of the city commission. That would really be the only difference.
And it would be
And
the
of course, any conditions that may be placed on it by this group would be part of that as well.
Okay, but it's the city commission that's going to approve this agreement?
They're going to approve the ordinance along with the agreement, yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts?
Let's go back to the original question about the 2 properties. I mean, there is a provision in the agreement that says that this agreement can be modified from time to time by mutual agreement of the participants. Are we, when I say we, you, of the impression that if the sale of the adjoining property goes through, that we will have now a revised proposal for one project, or if the sale of the property, of the adjoining property goes through, we will have a separate project for that property, and therefore a separate development agreement?
I think either one of those is a possibility depending on what path the developer wants to move on.
Okay, if the developer does make comments tonight, I wish that they would address that question.
I'm sure they will.
Thank you.
I believe it also discusses that in the agreement on 11.5, the acquisition of neighboring property in the event the developer or owner or any of its affiliates, subsidiaries, or related entities acquire the adjacent property to the west, and it talks what it is. At that time, or in the term of this agreement, the developer owner may notify the city within 10 days of that acquisition, and the parties agree that they will negotiate a master plan for the entire site, including the adjacent property, subject to the final approval by amendment to this agreement in accordance with the procedures of the code. So they would just amend this agreement. It wouldn't be a new agreement. It would just be amendment to the agreement.
And I think that's probably the most realistic goal, the way it would happen. And just to remind the group, an amendment is treated the same as a new agreement. So it would come back through
It
the
has to
same
come back
process.
before us,
Mhm.
yes.
Correct, just as you've seen them in the past. Amendments to development agreements are handled the same way, they're advertised the same way, and they're prepared the same way, and they go through the same public hearing process.
Just out of curiosity, what is that 469 Causeway currently being used as? Is there any
Empty.
Empty.
It's a vacant lot, yeah.
people parking on it? or
That's
they
not the
just-
parking lot? There's a parking lot there, too.
The parking lot would be directly across the street. If you see it on the aerial there, to the west is the parking lot for Marker 1. That's not the property we're talking about. We're talking about the green
spot.
parcel right
Green
right
parcel,
to the
okay.
west.
So
At
it's
least
not
0.41 acres, if I'm
So
not
no
mistaken.
parking, no storage, it's just a vacant?
It's a vacant
piece of
lot.
Green,
I believe it's vacant, and and I'm not sure it's ever had anything on it.
okay.
Joe, just a general question, not really on the agreement, but what makes this hotel a boutique hotel?
The term boutique is synonymous with a hotel with less than 100 rooms. It's just I want to say it's an industry term that you hear, pretty common.
Are there any other questions of staff? All right. May we speak with the developer or whoever else would like to answer all of our questions?
I guess that's me. Hey, good evening. I'm Doug Anderson. I live at 1413 Bayshore Boulevard. I'm a local Dunedin resident, contractor and a developer. And we can get through all the questions that you had because it is slightly confusing. We would not have been contemplating this project, nor would we have any interest in doing this right now, had it not been for the Toronto Blue Jays requesting us to assist them. This process started almost 2 years ago. And as you know, they've just finished about a $120 million player development center here in Dunedin. And the last portion of that was finding a above average place for their players to stay when they're in Dunedin. I learned a lot in this process. They have players here all year round because that development center is cycling players through on a continual basis. So when we looked at what the needs were and what the room counts were, we started in earnest trying to find a place in Dunedin because they truly, the Blue Jays wanted to stay in Dunedin. They want to spend their tax money here. They want to pay the bed tax here. They want to be good neighbors because they're so invested in the city. So that's where we came involved with it. And you know, you probably already know that the city of Dunedin has less than 1% of its available land mass that isn't already built. And then when you look at that 1% of available land mass and find any parcels that are zoned correctly, it gets to be a very, very small box. So we found this site in right during Christmas, New Year's in 2019, shifting over to 2020. So we went ahead and we got it under contract because it fulfills several requirements that they have. Their players don't have cars because most of the players that are here are minor league players. So we had to try and find a place that had walkable ability to get an evening meal. They feed the players breakfast at the development center. They also feed them lunch, but they don't feed them dinner. So we had several things we were looking for. One was Publix was walkable distance. The other was, and the Blue Jays will not allow me to say McDonald's because they don't want them eating McDonald's food, so I won't mention that. But we had several restaurants and several places that were easily accessible by this site. So it seemed to be the right way to proceed. We got through the design review committee. We designed a building. We went to both readings of the Architectural Review Committee. We passed both readings of the Architectural Review Committee, and then COVID hit. And it shut everything down. I mean, the city process, it was several months before we finally even got to Zoom meetings that we were able to get anything proceeding. So in that meeting that happened in August of 2020, when we were given permission by the City Commission to enter into a development agreement with the city manager, at that meeting the next day, the owner of the land across the street, which is the Hampton Inn, contacted me. So I went over and I talked to him. And he thought that the hotel would be much nicer and much better to be over in front of the Hampton Inn on that site that he had, which was a little bit bigger. It was almost an acre. What we didn't know, and we got some support that might be the better place to go. What we didn't know is when he was given that development agreement to build that Hampton Inn there, the city mandated that he agreed to put a restaurant in front of that hotel. So he didn't disclose that to us. And when we went back to the City Commission in May of this year, he went back to the City Commission in May of this year to negotiate a change from that restaurant to a hotel. He didn't have a friendly audience, and the mayor specifically, took exception because he had promised them a restaurant there. So that became. I still had the site across the street under contract, under due diligence. So we then moved back across the street, and that site allows us to create about 80% of what the Blue Jays need. It doesn't fulfill all of their requirements. So we looked at, and the city gave us a strong indication that we should try and get that 0.4 acres under contract so that we could provide the Blue Jays everything that they needed, which they will address for you tonight after I finish. I tried over a year to get it under contract, and every time we got them to the altar, they were a runaway bride, and we just couldn't get them to sign. So we finally, they finally came around and decided that maybe this was in their best interest. So we got it under contract about 2 months ago. So we're in the planning stages right now of doing an addition to the hotel and able to provide the Blue Jays everything that they really do require. One of the things is a 2,000 square foot meeting room that has a warming kitchen, because there are nights during the week, maybe 3 nights during the week, where they will cater food in to pay to feed their players while they conduct evening meetings. But it's a very rigorous thing these players go through. They get picked up at 7 o'clock in the morning, basically, taken to the development center. They work hard all day long. They get brought back at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And so they really wanted to have an excellent facility for them to be able to rest and recover before they started their next day. So that's how this all came about. The different entities, when I went and put a partnership together of equity partners to do that, that is what Grant Street Partners is. So in full disclosure, I own the majority of Grant Street Partners, but I do have very solid local equity partners that are participating in this. But my company, which is Coastal ICF Construction, would be the company that would actually do the construction. The construction of the project will be ICF, insulated concrete form construction, and it'll be 100% solar powered. It'll be a sustainable building. We will not be using any energy off the net. We'll still be hooked up to the net, because you can't sell back energy unless you're hooked up to the net. So it'll be a 100% sustainable building, and we've gone through a lot of process on trying to figure out how best to facilitate that other 0.4 acres. I've got it. We have it under contract, and that's under contract. We're in a due diligence period on it right now.
That's the green
Yes, sir.
piece of property.
Yeah, and there's never been anything there. And it's kind of a landlocked piece of property, because Marker 1.
But you're saying you have that under contract?
We do, yes, sir. So that Marker 1 parking lot is next to it, and Marker 1 cannot surrender that parking lot, because that's what they use on weekends for everybody that has their boats there. So I took the advice the City Commission gave me and provided to try and get that under contract, and we finally did get that under contract. So I think Charlie Wilson is here tonight. He's a general manager of minor league operations for the Blue Jays, and he'll be able to answer any questions that you would have about their use. But the significant thing is that the nights that we have available to sale to the general public will mostly be in November and December and January. That's their lowest time of participation during the year. Then from February, as you all know, spring training starts in February. From then all the way through to, again, the end of September, October, November timeframe, they'll be occupying majority of the rooms in the hotel. So we were required to do a full traffic study by a certified, state of Florida certified traffic engineer. And even at the 51-room hotel, if we didn't have the Blue Jays, if it was a normal hotel on the Causeway, the actual vehicle count was par with what is there with the Causeway car wash right now. They were within 2 counts a day difference between the hotel and what the car wash is today. So it's been a long process. If we had not tried to make that work across the street, we probably would have been standing in front of you a couple months earlier than we have. And COVID really delayed it from the time we got that authority to negotiate the development agreement. In the development agreement, we stipulated that we will pay for a crosswalk from our property over to Frenchie's, and he'll benefit the most by it, but our players will benefit by being able to go across the street and eat there. But they have opened up, Frenchie's has opened up a new concept that would be directly to our east, and that they have a lot of land there, and I think that's where they plan on most of their employees parking, so it'll make that whole thing safer today than it is with people trying to run across the street. Eco Seascape we did a name and a brand change formation about 1.5 years ago. So that's why you even saw that, because if COVID hadn't happened, that wouldn't have been a confusing factor. So that's basically what we're doing. And
So
Yes, sir.
did I hear you say early on that you've been before the Architectural Review Board?
Yes, sir.
Or that's our board that is
Yes, sir.
architects, and they've reviewed these plans that,
no, actually, the plans that
looked
they
at something
approved-
else.
Yeah, no, exactly. The original plan on that site, that's a very good question. The original plan on that site, to me, wasn't nearly as attractive of what we've come up with now. And it was more of a generic, it was pretty bland.
Okay, I guess my point was, I just wanted, I
Yeah,
heard
it-
you say you went before the Architectural Review Board, and I wanted to make sure it was the city board
It
that
was.
we've put together
Yes,
with
sir.
our local architects
Yep.
that scrutinizes everybody's projects.
Yep. And when we did, we also went to the architectural review across the street. We had gotten that far. And that's when it became known to us that the city would prefer a coastal vernacular look on the causeway. So we really redesigned the entire exterior of the building. We didn't change the footprint.
Okay.
We didn't change the site plan. We didn't change the access. But we made it the design that that the Architectural Review Board of the City of Dunedin said they would prefer to have on the Dunedin Causeway.
You will eventually go back before the
Yeah,
Architectural Review Board?
and what
with
you see
whatever
tonight
you-
is what they will see, and those plans have already been made available to them. And this is a mirror image of what they wanted on the other side of the street. And it's an attractive building, and so that's why we went in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
What will happen to this if and when that other property is acquired by you? Doesn't that mean that you're going to be redoing all these plans?
Well,
to
no,
include those?
but that's another good question. What we did is we looked at that, and we had many discussions about this on how to proceed. And the reason we've made the decision to press forward first with the 51 rooms is because we need to get a place for the Blue Jays. They're still going to have to look for rooms next year because we'd be under construction next year. So with the 51 room building, they were still going to have to go out into the market and try and find another 20 or 30 rooms during the busiest times of the year that they have here. So if we proceed on, I plan on submitting to the Design Review Committee first, and we made the decision to do this two-track. Nikki Day, the city attorney, had great foresight in including that possibility in this development agreement, so we didn't have to go back through the entire thing again, but could come back forward to the legislative bodies with an amendment to that development agreement and not have to start from scratch on it. So we've had outreach. We've met with the Dunedin Beach Homeowners Association. More importantly, we've met with the Harbor Point condos because they're right behind us. They're our neighbor right behind. And they invited us to come and meet with them, and we did. And we have done a couple different mailings of 200 or 300 each time because I wanted everybody to know what we're doing. And I didn't want to try and if you understand a project and if you understand what's coming, it's a lot easier to view it objectively than if you hear rumors or you hear hearsay of what it may be. So that's how we've conducted ourselves right from the start.
Can I ask you one other question?
Sure.
And maybe you can't answer this, and I wouldn't force that upon you, but if you were an odds person, is it a better than 50-50 odds that when we look at this project, the next time we see it, it's going to include the green piece of property?
It's going to include what?
The green piece of property?
Yes, sir. Probably, I'd say there's a high probability of that.
So better than 50% that when we look at this again? That
Yeah, I'm not an odds maker either, but I'll go ahead and go along.
I gave you a little leeway.
You
but
did. You did. You gave me some squeaking space.
I think I've heard what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, you know what, and again, if you put yourself in my position and put yourself in the Blue Jays position, it was very important that we get this one started, and then we can go back and try and bring on board after this one starts exactly what they need so that the final finished project provides all of their requirements. But I need to commend the Blue Jays because they could have gone anywhere they wanted to. But they wanted to stay in Dunedin. They wanted to be good neighbors with the city of Dunedin. They wanted to spend their money here, and they wanted to pay their tax base here. And they wanted their players to eat here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson.
Anybody else? I think Charlie Wilson from the Blue Jays would like to speak next.
Great, thanks again.
You bet. Thank you all.
Hey Charlie, how you doing, man?
Good to see you.
Good to see you tonight.
And
Yeah.
nice to see everybody. Thank you for having me and allowing us to present today. And as Doug said, Charlie Wilson with the Toronto Blue Jays, and really happy to be talking about our partnership with Eco Seascape and the ICF group to build a hotel for our minor league players. Brief intro on me. I've been with the Blue Jays for 25 years. For 7 of those years, I lived here in Dunedin, Florida, and ran the minor league facility. Had 2 kids that went through school here, including Dunedin High School. I live on the Dunedin Causeway, so I used to be here 300 days a year, but now I'm only here 100 days a year. But through the busy times of the year, February, March, April, and throughout the summer, so I'm comfortable and I'm aware of the Dunedin Causeway and the area and the challenges that we've got out there, traffic and all that stuff. So, be it as it may.
Did I hear you say traffic also?
Yep.
You were quite aware of the heavy traffic on the causeway?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I heard, okay.
And so, one reason why we're so excited about the hotel is because I think it's going to reduce the traffic a little bit compared to having a car wash on the site. And I'll get to that as we go on. But we at the Blue Jays, delighted to be here. We've been here obviously since '77. We've just gone through a huge renovation project and building our facility, multi-million-dollar. It's a world-class, state-of-the-art training and rehabilitation center, well north of $100 million. I think everybody knows that. Thank God for the city of Dunedin, amazing partners. We were able to do it together, and we're here for another 25 years. And to answer some questions that were asked earlier, it's certainly our intention to join up with Doug's hotel, with Doug's group, and sign a hotel lease for at least 25 years. I think the original contract says 10 years, but there's an option to extend for 10 and then another 5. If someone put a gun to our head and said, will we sign a 25-year lease, we would sign it today to move into this hotel. The reason why this is so important to us, this is the final piece in the puzzle of our development center. Sports science has taught us the benefits from rest and recovery, not just cognitive, but there's benefits on your athletic performance. And we owe that to our players, our athletes, to give them the best facility possible. So they can rest, so they can recover, so they can prepare for the next day. They come down here in February. They're here through the end of March into early April. Their schedule is 7 days a week. As Doug said, they're going to travel to the training facility at 7 a.m. by bus. They'll come back at 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon. Long days at the facility. Meetings, strength and conditioning, athletic training work, mental performance, you name it, before we even get on the field at 8:30. Long days, we'll eat 2 meals there. We'll come back to the complex, or excuse me, we'll come back to the hotel in the evening. And we will likely serve dinner at the hotel 3 to 4 nights a week, and then give the guys the option to eat out 3 or 4 nights a week. If we get this built the way we're talking about, we will have a full kitchen. We'll have facilities where we can have our caterers come right into the hotel and serve us dinner. And what that means is that our players aren't going to be out taking a seat at Frenchie's or Cricketers or Eddie's.
McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
McDonald's.
McDonald's.
No, we're not going to McDonald's.
There's a Subway there.
Subway, yes, for sure, we'll join up with them. And I will say, we've talked about this a lot, we will be creative with the local restaurateurs. So we can make this work where we can be in Dunedin, contribute, but not affect the tourists and the city folks that want to come to these establishments. We can talk to Frenchies and Eddie's and Subway and Cricketers 2 days in advance, and we can order our food in advance, and they can give us a separate order. We can come and pick it up, take it to our hotel, or they can deliver it. Be it as it may, we'll figure out a way to be creative. So we're contributing to the economy, but we're not, taking seats away from the Dunedin folks. And we've thought long and hard about this.
Just doing some math here, so let's see how creative you are. You bring about 250 players in February. Some of those players are very well off, and I know they own their own houses. You got a lot of guys that are gonna. How are you planning on bunking them per room? How are these rooms have king beds, or how are you gonna put all these guys in there?
They got
Yeah,
twins.
great question, and that's why it's so important that we've got with Doug and his group and Grant Street Partners. Yeah. we've got a blank canvas here. We're going to start from scratch. So this is going to be the best dormitory / hotel in all of professional baseball, I assure you. We've got the rooms designed. Each room will have two king beds. I don't know what the term is, but they'll have extra space at the end. They'll be long enough for the guys that are 6'4" and 6'5". So we'll have good sized beds. We'll have 2 closets. We'll have 2 full desks, 2, I think, 50 or 60-inch TVs as well. Obviously, bathroom, refrigerator, microwave. What have I missed? But anyway, the importance of having 2 desks, 2 workstations, is so the athletes can come home and do their homework at night. And people laugh, well, athletes don't do homework, but they do now. This is 2020, and guys will have their priority goals to come back and work on. They'll be reviewing their strength and conditioning programs. They'll be reviewing their on-field work, bunt, defense, whatever it is, pitchers, fielding practice routine for the next day. So they've got the big screen TVs. They can follow the plans. They can get online. They can do their email. And of course, some of the guys are going to spend some time gaming or whatever it is the young guys do, or watch a video in their free time.
Two players per room?
Yeah, 2 players per room with the exercise kings.
100 players.
So Charlie, how many rooms do you need?
Well, we're hoping to get between 70 and 75 would be ideal.
Okay.
So our minor league camp, this year we're coming in at 150.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, so 70, 75 times 2. The older players of the 150, call it, I'm guessing, 10 to 15 players are married and or have children. So that takes us down to about 140, and there's your 70 rooms, 70 times 2.
Okay.
So practice day, one of these, in fact, the picture that's up right now has the bus. I've seen the buses over at the complex.
Yeah.
There's room for those guys to, not impede traffic. You're going to have fans hanging around that building. Is it geared that bus can get in there? And this will eliminate the small transport vans that go between the complex and the stadium now? Or what are your plans to be able to move these guys back and forth?
Predominantly, it's the buses in the morning and the bus in the evening. And it may be 2 buses, actually. The 2 50-passenger buses. We'll probably have one go at 6:45 and one depart at 7:15. That's likely what will happen. We may have a shuttle bus going back. I doubt it. I think that it'll be mostly just the 50-passenger buses, and we'll contract those. We'll have them all day. So if for whatever reason one group or a group of players is done at 4 o'clock, we can bring the first 40 guys back, and it can shuttle. The benefit of this hotel is it's within 8 minutes of the complex, so we could shuttle a 50-passenger bus back and forth.
Yeah, and they show the bus on the site plan and
I saw that,
and
yeah.
how it wraps around and how it fits into all the turns.
Charlie,
The fact that you've got 100% sustainable building, I hope that you'll consider electric buses in this. Just a suggestion.
Yeah,
Suggestion.
yeah, that's a really good idea. I'll take any guidance or suggestions on that. I know the group that we deal with now, but if you've got some suggestions of who I would reach out to, or if you've got any contacts in that industry, I'd gladly take it.
I will give them
Come
to
a
you.
long way
later.
since trying to find rooms around town for these players to stay at people's houses.
Yeah,
You and I've been around a long time working on this.
I know it. It's hopefully this comes through, and it's going to be great. I love Dunedin. Of course, my kids have grown up here. My wife, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law. I don't want to be contributing to Clearwater or Oldsmar. Great cities, but we want to give our money to Dunedin. Like, Dunedin is the Blue Jays. We're Dunedin. Like, we need to be here.
Charlie, I don't want to sound like a broken record, okay? But this issue with the second piece of property is a real concern of mine. Is that a major concern of the Blue Jays, that we try and secure this piece of property to try and fulfill our total needs for the Blue Jay requirement?
Oh yeah, we're in full support. We would really like to have it, and from my understanding, and Doug can speak more on this, but like I think we've got it. Like I think it's under contract, and it's part of the plan.
It's part of the plan.
Yes. Yep.
Again, I don't mean to be critical about things. I just want you to know I am a supporter of the Blue Jays. When the Blue Jays first came to Dunedin, I was one of the first people to be on our citizen participation board to build the very first stadium for the Blue Jays. So I'm totally invested into the Blue Jays, but I just want to see us do the right kind of project in the right spot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And part of our struggle is finding available land. Like, less than 1% of land is developable in Dunedin. We searched long and hard since December 2019. We've looked everywhere. Options to buy and scrape, redevelop. We couldn't find anything. And finally, we found something in the Causeway, and it's a good fit in a lot of fronts. And I do want to reiterate that our players are here to work. Baseball 7 days a week in the spring training period, and this is their lifeline. This is what they're here to do. They're not here to party. They're not here to hang out at the beach or the Causeway. They're going to be at our facility. And I think now in 2020, we all look at the salaries in professional sports, and everybody knows how many millions of dollars an athlete can make. It's really competitive. These guys want to be the best. They want to make it to the major leagues, and they're going to do whatever they can to get a leg up on their teammates, their colleagues, players in other organizations. So they're taking it seriously. And from our standpoint, we want to give them the best facilities so that they can rest, recover, prepare for the next day, study, review notes, English lessons for the Spanish-speaking players, all that stuff. So I hope that everybody knows how sincere we are and genuine, that this is a huge, huge project for us, and it's really the final piece of the puzzle for our development.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that has any questions of Mr. Wilson? Thank you so much for coming forward.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Charlie.
Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else regarding this ordinance that would like to speak to it before we make this open to the public?
I think that since we're going to be talking about this again in the very near future, a lot of thought went into how we exit and egress the buses. So as you know, there's an island on the Causeway, and the left turn in.
Right, the median's in the wrong
Yeah,
spot.
no, it's actually okay. We took it to if Pinellas County Planning Board actually controls the Causeway. So early on in the process, we had to satisfy sanitation, we had to satisfy the fire marshal, and we had to satisfy the ability and the radiuses of the bus to get in and out. So that's why the design that you see up there is set that way, because that design satisfies all those departments, and it satisfies that size of bus coming in and out of the facility. And it is set up so that that island, that is the big break in the island there, works fine for that left turn, and Pinellas County Planning Board had no objections to what we laid out. But we coordinated all this with them long in advance when we first started working on the site. It wasn't neglected. It was a key part of the planning process.
That was one of my notes on my civil drawings, but I'm not allowed to ask questions about civil things at meetings of this nature, so
Well,
you answered it.
but Mr. Massari, you made a great point. So as part of the, I think what Doug is alluding to, as part of Exhibit E, which was the civil drawings we provided to you in your backup, there's the bus turn page. You could see that movement
Well,
of the island. So we
did-
wanted to make sure you had that, so you understand. That was one of the things staff looked at in the initial phases, well over a year ago, when this was still really starting out. So we wanted to make sure you had that bus turn movement page, so you could see how they'd be coming in off the median and then entering the site and exiting the site. And of course, you can see the site plan shows the bus parked on it, so.
Thank you.
A lot of thought went into it. For instance, the placement of the dumpster was for sanitation to be able to pull straight in, pick it up, and then exit the same way the buses would. Same with the fire marshal. The site is not a large site. It's a tight site. And so we had to take all those things into consideration in the planning stages. City staff was invaluable with the help and the assistance we received from them to be able to satisfy all the departments within the city.
Well, I definitely do agree with you. It is a very tight site, okay?
It's very, very tight.
Yep.
But, you know, when you look at the land costs, and Dunedin is a victim of its own success, because our land costs are so expensive here. And one thing Charlie didn't mention.
We did something good.
Say again?
We did something good.
Yes, sir. I think that and Mother Nature,
Yeah.
by the location of the city. But we also, the Grant Street Partners are also owners of the Grant Street Inn, which I'm pleased to tell you will be coming out of the ground in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, good.
And that's on Grant Street, and that is a 22-room, all-suite, small hotel on Grant Street. And the Blue Jays have full use of that facility, so that's going to give them the opportunity to house 44 more players. And I forgot to mention that in my initial opening remarks, but we've really kind of thought this whole thing through.
Mhm.
That's all I had to say. If anybody has any questions?
Thanks again.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open this meeting up to the public. If there's anyone in the public that wishes to speak to this, please come forward at this time. You'll need to identify yourself. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this ordinance, this is your opportunity to speak at this time. Anyone else? Okay.
I would.
Please come up.
She wasn't sworn in. She wasn't sworn in.
I live right on Paula Drive.
You'll need to identify
My
yourself.
name is Judith Belden.
Thank you.
Thank you. I live at 433 Paula Drive South. I just moved there back in December. So thank you for considering the area. There's a lot of opportunity for development there, so this could be very, very helpful, which would be wonderful. So just a question in terms of the traffic is obviously a big issue, and I'm hearing that you did some studies on that in terms of the car wash, which I really don't see a lot of people using, frankly. But in terms of the use to, during that time period to Honeymoon Island is a lot of traffic, a lot of issues. Sounds like you'll be gone most of the time during that time, except for maybe when you're returning in the evening. It backs up a lot and causes a lot of issues. So what it sounds like from your design perspective, that your exits and entrances will only be on Curlew. It will not be on Paula Drive or influence any of those other surrounding smaller streets. There's bicyclers, children, dogs, all kinds of things. So I guess I just ask about that. The other thing, crossing that road is pretty difficult. So you talked about a crosswalk. Is that something that's elevated that you're thinking of? So you would walk over it? Because that would be a consideration, I would think, for your players, because it is rather a lot of hazard at evening time trying to walk back and forth.
I'm under the impression it's going to be one of those with the flashing yellow lights.
Well, that's there right now.
Just like the one down the street.
But that's down the street.
It's, people don't always slow down for that. I
That's
live there.
true.
They really do not. So if I had valuable players, frankly, I'd want a crosswalk over it. So just a consideration, because they come down there, actually they race at evening time. I'm not sure if you've been out there. There's drag racing. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. So we need some good establishments there to kind of take care of some of the things that are happening. But I guess my question is again about the traffic in and out and consideration for those kinds of things. So do you address that, or do you guys, or?
Well,
I'm
no,
sure the
thank you
process-
very much for bringing that to our attention, and those are duly noted. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak to this ordinance? This would be your opportunity.
In the back there, Dan.
In the back.
Please come forward.
My name's John Stevenson. I'm at 2651 Leisure Lane, and in Dunedin. Michael Place is my address. I have a couple questions. Has anyone looked at the economic considerations that this development will have, bearing in mind that the Major League Baseball basically reorganized, took over minor league baseball earlier this year, and probably a couple dozen teams were just eliminated. I haven't heard any comments regarding the impact of that change, but it also brought about, after a number of years of watching AAA baseball here in Dunedin in the summertime. My attendance at a game a few weeks ago found almost as many vendors as there were participants. I sat behind home plate. Nice view, but there were less than 200 people in the stadium. Realized when I got there that I was watching low A ball and not triple A ball. And the triple A ball that had been played here for all those years, which had quite a few people who were recognized as players either from the big leagues or coming up, had shifted, and now they're playing out in the West Coast. I don't know if you've considered that as well. What I'm saying is the economic viability of a proposal, given what we're seeing in some pretty financially difficult times for minor league baseball, I would have thought would have been a consideration. They weren't here on your agenda when you spoke a year ago, but they have been quite a few changes since then. The other thing I wanted to ask is just because my understanding of how minor league compensation works for minor league ball players, they get some income, monthly income. About 2 years ago, they used to get overtime, but the federal government overruled that and no longer get overtime pay. My understanding is that they also get per diem. So when we have a hotel, is this hotel being paid for directly by the Toronto Blue Jays organization, or are they simply taking the per diems that people have and placing them and using them to pay the rent or the accommodation fees at the lodging fees? If my understanding is correct, you're talking about a accommodations cost that's probably double their monthly compensation. I'd like to think that can work, but I have considerable difficulty seeing that thing being sustainable with where we are with the minor league baseball team programs here in this country at this point in time. And I'd offer those as a couple questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. I will direct those to either Mr. Wilson or Mr. Anderson, if they could respond, if you are able, regarding those two questions.
You got to come.
Yes, please come back up.
So I'll do my best to respond. So number one, AAA baseball has never been played in Dunedin, Florida. We had full season A-ball, the Florida State League, from 1987 till 2020, and now we're low A. So it's just a classification below what we were accustomed to. The big economic driver, of course, is Major League Spring Training. We're here from February until the end of March. That's where the big revenues come in for the city and the Blue Jays. The A-ball team's never been sort of a big revenue for us. To be quite honest, it's been an expense on our budgets. But it's a player development expense. It's a necessary expense. The Blue Jays fund it.
Well, the city, the county have also ponied up $100 million to sort of a $100 million investment that basically I wonder if it's even worth turning on the lights during the months from April to January. That's how poor the attendance was compared to what I've experienced in prior years.
I believe it would be appropriate for you to get closer to the microphone. I know you're being really considerate about your 6 feet apart from each other, but I think that, because this is being recorded, it's essential that you be
Economic
heard.
considerations to the community are also the fact that there's a $100 million investment that's been made by the county, the city, and the state, and from what I could see, it doesn't really pay to even turn the lights on in those games when there's only 200 players, 200 fans in the stadiums, and I wonder how well we've monitored the economic performance that we expected from the baseball development center and the baseball stadium, especially given the fact that the last 2 years have really been a financial disaster to first minor league teams. Some of those programs have been completely eliminated. Lansing Lugnuts, I'm from Michigan, they were eliminated. And Major League Baseball certainly plays their economics have changed quite a bit as well.
But remember that these guys paid the lion's share of that stadium and the player development complex. when you pull that $100 million number, started at 80, and our friends at,
It's still 80.
that's closer to 120. And the lion's share of that was paid by Toronto.
That's good.
We as a city were the smallest contributor, Pinellas County, the state, and then the top half was all paid by Toronto. So you're right, they've made a real financial commitment. And I was at the game last week, and you said maybe there's 50 people there. So I understand what you're saying, and
You wonder if you can justify turning the lights on at some
But
point.
but it's still the training for the minor league players. They get additional training and they're able to play and do different things. It's not a profit center for the Blue Jays, the minor league teams. They're just a training program.
The attendance dropped dramatically.
Well, I'm sure during the
I saw a change
COVID
in the,
thing, it's dropped quite a bit.
well, I
and
I
Do
think you
you-
have some
and there's so much more-
responsibilities to monitor your metrics that you anticipated from that investment. Somebody has to be watching the economics of that and the activity, similar to what you pointed out on other agreements that you've had with other people. It's important to monitor them annually, just make sure that they're being complied with. And I'd say that I was surprised to learn how much financial discord there had been risen in the last 6-8 months in the minor league baseball program. And survivability.
Mr. Wilson, do you have anything that you'd like to shed some light on?
Sure. The Toronto Blue Jays own and operate, can I just have a little bit of space?
Yeah.
We own and operate the Dunedin Ball Club, so we're responsible for the majority of the expenses for the Dunedin Blue Jays. So I want to make that clear. It's not a city expense, it's not a county, it's not a state. It's the Toronto Blue Jays are covering the cost. A couple of other things. The hotel here that we're going to build, the Toronto Blue Jays will be paying for the hotel costs, not the players.
It won't be part of a per diem.
No, sir. Nothing to do with per diem. And then another point you made about Lansing, just so you know, on the Lugnuts, so you're aware, they didn't lose their team. The Oakland A's have now assumed the affiliation, so the good news, they still have their team in Lansing, Michigan. And I wanted you to be aware of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Are there any other thoughts that you have that you'd like to have answered? Thank you so much for coming forward. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak to this ordinance? This would be your opportunity. Anybody else? Hearing none. Public hearing is closed. Members of the board.
that was an interesting topic about the economic. Remember, we also don't, it's going to be pretty highly taxed out there. Property taxes, the money that those players, I realize that they're low, a lot of them are low on the totem pole as far as climbing the ranks, but they're still going to pump their money back into the economy out there. I've watched that team for many, many years here, and it's a large employer, a large property owner, and that's a nice piece of property to go on the tax roll for the city if and when this goes through. That's all.
So since we're only supposed to talk about the development agreement, I have no problems or issues with it.
Thank you, Mr. Walensky.
Same here. When they come back before us for the site, for the additional design review, then we'll talk about it then.
Thank you. Anybody else have any more comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance 21-29.
I'll second that.
And with that is that approving and authorizing the executive execution of the development agreement. I'm assuming that's what you mean.
Yes, that's what
Okay.
the ordinance is.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. We've unanimously approved and authorized the execution of the development agreement between the City of Dunedin and the Coastal ICF Construction Services and Grant Street Partners LLC for the Dunedin Causeway Hotel at 491 Causeway Boulevard. Move on to open agenda. If there's anyone on the board that would like to speak to any thoughts, concerns that you might have? Questions of staff? None at this time. Okay. Well, I'd like to remind all of you that our next LPA meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 13th at 6 o'clock here at City Hall. And last but not least, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. See you next month.
Yes?
Thank you for watching this City of Dunedin government meeting. If you'd like to review any part of this meeting or watch any previous government meeting coverage, you can watch these meetings online anytime through the city's website, dunedingov.com. Stay connected with everything Dunedin. Follow the city on this channel and on the city's Facebook page, through Twitter, and on the city's YouTube channel. Thanks again for watching this Dunedin television production.